So, I don't know, Ethan. I just want to go over this topic real quick because, for those who don't follow video games, there is constant policing of any AI use among small indie developers. They are the most resource-constrained firms in a field where profits are rare and artistic vision is often compromised. But they are punished more harshly than big devs by their audience. Consumer segment feelings about AI are going to be a bigger driver than economics in determining which fields become efficient and which become artisanal in reaction to AI. That will be especially challenging for companies whose audiences span both types of audiences, like indie video games. And I just kind of want to dwell on that for a minute, because here's something that people aren't realizing. See, your nostalgia for something that no longer exists is kind of what has to end. You're allowed to just appreciate what came out of a former era, realize that, it is what it is, and it's special for that. And there aren't people that are trying to recreate that today. And if they would, then their product would fail, especially if it arrived running at 320 by 240, 256 colors, even though that was quite an accomplishment at the time. See, let me rewind all the way back to some shit that I lived, okay? What you're describing is a cottage industry that later became an industry of games. The cottage industry days are over. They're not coming back. So given that there is industry today, it does mean there will now be an emergence of artisanal game creation, which kind of goes all the way back to, why some people knit instead of worrying about how a robot knits. They just knit. And so there will be people that will hand create things within all of software, not just games, but let's keep it focused on games for a minute. There will be people who do this by hand because it's what they enjoy. And that will never go away. The same as there are mechanics who build the car from the ground up, every single piece of the car by hand. They make the chassis, they tune the suspension and build it. They, machine literally everything. Often the only thing that they don't machine themselves is like the engine, maybe a windshield. The remainder of the car is something that they build by hand themselves because they enjoy the craft. And here we are in 2026 where I can go get a resto mod made by somebody who does it that way, appreciate the result, and then still drive a Toyota. So, why? Well, maybe because I care about the experience I have while driving the handmade resto mod more than the Toyota. So the Toyota is the one that I daily, so that I just don't have to worry about it as much. Things can happen to a Toyota. Why? Because there's like a billion other Toyotas that I can just go get a new one, and now I still have my Toyota. Whereas if something were to happen to the handmade artisanal car, I would be wrecked. Simply because, and I don't mean that as a pun, I mean it just hit me late, but I wouldn't be able to replace it even if I had the same person make me a new one, simply because it would not be the same thing. And that is what it is. And that will always have value and it will always exist. It isn't like AI is going to make that shit not exist. So to try to compare what people are trying to do today with what we did in the 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, where, one or two people could collaborate on a product on a simpler machine, generating a simpler result for a much simpler audience that had simpler expectations, to what needs to happen today is just, I'm sorry, but you're retarded for even doing that. Because what has happened is that audience expectations have changed. The hardware, the capabilities, all the rest have all changed. And so what you're trying to tell me is that, and by the way, I am not making a game. I am from games, decades in it. So what you're trying to tell me is that in order to cope with the complexity as an artisanal creator today, I'm not allowed to use a power tool. That's literally all you're telling me, is that I'm not allowed to use a power tool. There is something in front of me that can help me manage and deal with the complexity of the hardware, the software needed to run that hardware, to help me hit the demands of my much more complicated audience. And I'm not allowed to use that for some reason. So instead, what I have to do in order to satisfy the 8 screeching Riris from Reddit is I have to work on this as a ship in a bottle project where I'm only allowed to use like tweezers and shit. Notepad. I'm only allowed to use Notepad. I'm not even allowed to use Blender 3D because that's cheating. You should just be entering the vertices by hand, you lazy fuck. So I have to use Notepad and work on this project that, by the way, still has to, you know, I got to deliver shaders and shit. Like, it's wild. Has to hit all the marks and maybe ship that before I die. Or I can use tools, right? Like I can use things like VS Code. Whoa, how dare I with autocomplete? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why, why are you cheating, you bastard? Or, I don't know, a tool like Blender, where like, oh my God, the computer can do math, inverse kinematics, and help me solve the animation. Like, the fuck do you mean you use a physics engine in Blender? You should be animating that shit by hand. In fact, why are you even using electricity and tools at all? You should be like modeling clay, taking 24 pictures, and ship it as a fucking movie. I'm so sick of the stupid, right? That like this video got made. And it's basically boiling down to people telling craftsmen that they're not allowed to use power tools to generate a result. The power tool isn't the thing with the idea. The power tool isn't the thing that's even really putting in the work. It's doing some labor, but it's not putting in the work. Or you can explain why Wizards of the Coast has a famous name that thought up the game. You can explain why, like, an EA Maxis, or before that Maxis, right, had a famous name that would think up the game, right? Microprose had one of those. You know, these are people that are gifted, they are special, and I'm telling you right now, they used compilers. Like, how dare they not use a hex editor and just write the machine code directly to the processor? Why would they ever choose to use a tool that makes that job easier? I mean, come on now. Where's the authenticity? So, like, you know, punch cards are cheating, you faggot. The fuck? That's literally what you sound like. That is exactly what you sound like. When you're looking at a power tool and you're behaving like this because somebody started using a power tool. I mean, I'm sorry, but generally speaking, we call that arrested development. You know what I mean? You're a chronological adult if you're even an adult. I think a lot of this comes from people who are not a customer anyway. You are unemployed behavior. And frankly, people are getting sick of it. You know, the fact that you can be loud means less by the day. There are people like me who don't give a fuck and are going to tell you that to your face now. Because we just don't give a fuck. Did you not fucking hear me? I spoke. So, do you think that back when I was working on PlayStation 1 and we had 2 megabytes total in the machine, do you think that I enjoyed, and I was using tools at the time, Visual Studio, oh my God, what do you mean you use a compiler connected to a dev kit? You should just be soldering the chip, faggot. So do you think that I enjoyed having to rewrite the shit that happens when your bitch ass calls malloc and free, which you can't even do anymore in modern times? The heap. Do you think I enjoyed having to convert a doubly linked list heap into a singly linked list heap so that we could get 50% back on the overhead in the heap so that the game could get out the goddamn door on time? Do you think I enjoyed having to do that overnight in one night? Entirely rewrite the heap, which by the way is from a C library that I didn't write. So I had to go in and figure out, and optimized, mind you, it's being used on a console that has 2 megabytes of RAM. You'd think it's pretty carefully selected for how it's been written and optimized. So we're talking about optimized C code that I had to go through by hand in one night in order to get that thing out the door. And I wasn't even responsible for memory management. I was just the motherfucker in the studio who could do that shit. So you're telling me today that I have a power tool in front of me that would have been able to do that in all of, I don't know, 1 hour tops instead of like 18? You're telling me I'm not allowed to use the power tool? You need to look at my face. Fuck you. Fuck you. It's like telling a construction worker that he's not allowed to use a bandsaw. a circular saw. Tell the lumberjack he's not allowed to use a chainsaw. How dare he? The carpenter that he's not allowed to use a drill. Any of those people would pick up a hammer and beat you with it. You would deserve it. I would laugh as it happens to you. Go have a different day.